You've got a board game shelf. It is stacked. We know it. And how are you going to get more games into your shelf is the question. Or maybe you can get a little bit of practice by playing Shelfie Stacker. Hey gang, thanks for joining us at Tantrum House Studio 3. I'm Will Meadows.
And I'm Sara Meadows, and today we are sharing our review and opinions on the game Shelfie Stacker from Arkus Games.
This is a 1 to 4 player dice placement game from designer Shem Phillips that features art from Paul and Claire Tobin. It takes about 20 to 40 minutes to play, and in the game players will roll 9 dice, which will represent games that are arriving in the mail.
They will then choose from their hand of action cards a single card to play each turn.
That card will determine the order they get to draft packages in, as well as what special powers they can use for that round or save for future rounds in the game.
Players must either place their dice onto their big shelf in ascending order, or they can place the games onto their shelf of shame.
Whoa, love it. Shelf of shame. There it is.
Powers in the game will allow them to do things like increase or decrease the value of a die, move a die from their shelf of shame to their big shelf, or onto a card.
Or ignore colors, or stack the same number twice, and all the other dice manipulation tools and techniques that you've seen in other games.
The game will feature 3 unique goals that everyone is trying to achieve.
And players will score based on how high they are able to stack their shelves.
They will lose points for the games on their shelf of shame, and the player with the highest score wins.
We all know it's a fine art trying to stack your games just perfectly on your shelf, whether you do it by color coordination or player count or however you decide to stack them. In this game, we're recreating that scenario where games do arrive in the mail every day, at our house it seems like, and you've got to find a place to put those games. This is a real struggle that we have. The struggle is real. In this game, each player's deck consists of 16 cards. You're actually going to only choose half of those to play with, and so you don't know what other cards other players might be using at the table each round.
Yeah, so you can choose to all use the same cards, or you can choose to randomize it, and players might end up with different cards. Or there's even some suggestions for variants of drafting cards. So I did enjoy that you have a choice with what you're going to play with, and there are some varying abilities and things that may change up what you can do to help mitigate those games arriving those big box games arriving after you've already placed stacks of little games at the top of your shelf.
Yeah, so you'll pick a card each round. Whoever has the lowest number will get to go first in drafting those cards, which that alone can be really powerful. You do get to save those cards so you don't have to use them immediately, which is very nice, yes, because you may just really need this package because it has the exact number die that you need on it. You may not even care what the power is, but the fact that you can reuse it later is pretty magical.
Yes, all the characters, basically, their powers are one-time use. Like you said, you can save up for it. So, I always like to place out my cat first. So, reduce a number so that I can, when I'm starting the game, I can get some lower numbers out on my shelf. The big box games are going to fill a whole calyx square and get those out first. And the other thing you need to think about while you're drafting is not only what dice and trying to get the lower numbers first, but also the goals. There's 3 goals, and one of them is based on the color, and that can be stolen throughout the game. So also paying attention to what other players do is important.
Yeah, those goals are going to change the way you play the game each round, because sometimes you're going to be trying to get similar colors in multiple stacks. Sometimes you're going to be trying to get 3 dice, on your board in as many places as possible. You are going to always score that same height shelf point value. You're going to score points for the height of the stacks that you have, as well as whatever the highest numbered die is basically at the end of the game. And so sometimes you are trying to build up to that 6 because you want to have room for all the games on your shelf. However, maybe you just need to cap them and put high numbers on there so that you can score some points at the end of the game that way.
Yeah. One other rule we didn't mention is that each column is going to need to be the same color, which does make it tricky when you're drafting dice. So there's some cards that allow you to mitigate that. And there's also a rule that if you take a 6, you can change it to whatever number you'd like, which is nice. But like Will said, sixes are going to score quite a bit more points, obviously more points than other numbers at the end of the game scoring. So do I place it at the top to get those 6 points, or do I change it into, maybe I got two columns of green and I have a green 6, I might want to place it somewhere else to maybe complete a goal.
Now, we recently played another game called My Shelfie. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the two of them in comparison? Which one do you lean towards?
So My Shelfie is very much a building patterns of things like one another next to each other. So while this one is a dice manipulation game, I think I enjoy this one a little bit more, even though this one's probably a little harder. The other one is pulling items from a pool that you're going to put into your shelf. And that one's a little simpler to play, although I did accidentally play a super hard variant mode that we read the rules wrong the very first time. So there's that. This one does offer some more variability to the game, that because you can select what characters you want at the beginning, and you can do that in a very fun way if you so choose. I think I kind of like this one better.
Yeah, I agree. The components in the other one are pretty neat because it's actually like a Connect 4 type of feel to it, which is pretty fun. But I agree, this one has a little bit more meat to it, a little more choices. I prefer dice manipulation as a mechanic over pattern building, although I think you actually prefer pattern building.
I actually prefer pattern building, but dice manipulation's up there too.
Yeah, and I felt like this one did offer a lot of replayability as well, because your goals are going to change and there's just some neat stuff going on.
One thing with replayability, this one does have 2 different solo modes. So it has a regular solo mode, and then it has play against Shem Phillips's bot solo mode.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot as far as more meat to a solo mode than most games would have.
Yeah, if you enjoy either of those ideas, definitely check out both of them. But we definitely enjoyed Shelfie Stacker, and we think that you would as well.